Leather helmet. The leather helmet is where football head protection began. Used from the late 1800s through the early decades of the 20th century, these helmets were soft, unpadded, and offered only minimal protection against the physical demands of the game. They were often handmade, shaped from thick cowhide leather, and held together with stitching rather than any rigid structure. Players were not even required to wear them for much of this era. Helmet use only became mandatory in the NFL in 1943. Despite their obvious limitations by modern standards, leather helmets represented the first acknowledgement that the head needed some form of protection during play. Today, they are mostly seen in historical photographs and museum displays, serving as a reminder of how dramatically the sport's approach to safety has evolved. Single-bar helmet. As the game grew more physical through the mid-20th century, manufacturers began adding face protection to the basic shell design. The single-bar face mask was among the earliest versions, a single curved bar extending from one side of the helmet to the other, positioned in front of the nose and mouth. It offered some protection against direct contact to the face, but left the eyes and forehead largely exposed. Quarterbacks and kickers sometimes preferred this style well into the 1970s and 1980s, valuing the unobstructed field of vision it provided. The single bar has largely disappeared from active use at the professional and collegiate levels, though it remains iconic in the visual history of the sport. Full cage helmet. Protection needs vary depending on position, and nowhere is that clearer than with the full cage design. Full cage helmets feature a dense grid of bars covering the entire front of the face, providing maximum facial protection. Linemen, both offensive and defensive, are the players most associated with this style, as they engage in direct physical confrontation on nearly every single play. The cage absorbs and deflects contact that would otherwise reach the nose, jaw, and cheeks. Riddell and Schutt, two of the most established helmet manufacturers in American football, have produced full cage configurations for decades, continuously refining the bar geometry to balance protection with weight and visibility. Skill position helmet. Not every player on the field faces the same kind of contact. Skill position helmets are designed for players who prioritize speed, agility, and vision. Wide receivers, defensive backs, and running backs among them. These helmets use an open face mask with fewer bars, giving the player a wider field of view. The shell is often lighter and more aerodynamic than helmets built for linemen. As helmet technology has advanced, skill position designs have incorporated improved padding systems and impact-absorbing liners that compensate for the reduced bulk. Speed and awareness matter enormously in the open field, and the design of these helmets reflects that priority directly. Revolution helmet. Riddell introduced the Revolution helmet in 2002, and it marked a turning point in how the industry thought about concussion prevention. Prior to this design, most helmets focused primarily on preventing skull fractures and catastrophic injuries. The Revolution was among the first helmets built with the specific goal of reducing the rotational and linear forces associated with concussions. It featured an extended back coverage, a more anatomical shell shape, and an improved interior padding system. Independent studies at the time showed measurable reductions in concussion rates among players who wore it. The Revolution sparked a broader shift across the entire industry toward evidence-based helmet design, influencing every major manufacturer that followed. Speed helmet. Riddell's Speed helmet became one of the most widely recognized designs in professional football. Introduced as an evolution of earlier models, it combined a sleek, low-profile shell with improved interior cushioning and a distinctive overall aesthetic. The design prioritized both performance and protection, and its appearance on NFL sidelines for years made it visually synonymous with the modern game. The Speed helmet introduced a more contoured fit around the back of the head, reducing the gap between the helmet and the neck area that earlier designs had left exposed. Many players at the professional level wore some version of the Speed for well over a decade, making it one of the most commercially successful football helmet designs ever produced. Youth helmet. Youth helmets address a specific and important challenge: protecting developing brains in younger players whose heads are still growing. These helmets are scaled down in size, but are not simply smaller versions of adult models. The internal padding and fit systems are specifically designed to accommodate the proportions of younger heads, which sit differently relative to the neck and spine. The chin strap systems are typically more secure, and the overall construction tends to prioritize a snug, consistent fit above all else. Organizations like USA Football and various state athletic associations have become increasingly involved in setting certification standards for youth helmets, reflecting growing awareness of how early exposure exposure to head impacts can affect long-term health. Vicis Zero1. The Vicis Zero1 arrived in 2017 and immediately drew attention for being fundamentally different from anything the market had seen before. Rather than a rigid outer shell, the Zero1 used a soft, multi-layered outer casing designed to deform on impact, slowing the force before it reached the inner structure. The concept borrowed principles from automotive safety engineering, the idea that a controlled deformation absorbs more energy than a rigid surface. When the NFL began publishing annual helmet safety rankings, the Zero1 consistently appeared at or near the top of the list. It demonstrated that the traditional approach to helmet construction was not the only viable path, opening the door for further innovation from other manufacturers. Hybrid helmets combine foam padding systems with inflatable air bladder technology to create a more customized and adaptive fit. Traditional foam-only helmets compress over time and lose some of their protective qualities. Air bladder systems, by contrast, allow the fit to be adjusted and maintained more precisely across the season. Hybrid designs attempt to capture the benefits of both: the reliable, consistent protection of dense foam combined with the personalized fit that Air Systems provide. Schutz's Air XP line is one of the more well-known examples of this approach, and variations of the hybrid concept have now appeared across multiple brands at the youth, collegiate, and professional levels. Guardian Cap. The Guardian Cap represents a different kind of protection entirely. Rather than replacing the helmet, it is a soft, padded shell worn over the outside of an existing helmet. Developed with the intention of reducing the impact forces generated during practice, it adds a layer of energy-absorbing foam on top of whatever helmet the player is already wearing. The NFL began requiring players in certain positions to wear Guardian caps during preseason practices starting in 2022. The data behind the product suggests it can reduce impact severity during the repeated lower-speed collisions that are common in practice sessions. It is not intended for use during games, but its adoption at the league level reflects a growing recognition that practice-related head contact deserves the same attention as game day injuries.